All right, good morning. Welcome to this week's edition of Inspire the Spirit. It is August, so welcome to the dog days of summer. And if you stepped outside, the dogs are definitely barking. It is hot as can be. But it's our last month before we get into the BER months. The BER months are right around the corner, so you just got to survive this month. And if you need some reprieve today, it is National Ice Cream Sandwich Day. So if you need a break from the heat, there's your excuse to have an ice cream sandwich. The other thing that happens in the start of August is we're wrapping up Vacation Bible Schools. Now, if you're like a lot of us, you spent your childhood going to Vacation Bible School. And parents would drop you off every Monday. You'd go for a week and you'd learn all kinds of great songs and stories and the old Bibles and the classic Bible stories and messages, and you just thought it was a great week. You got all kinds of snacks, which is the reason I went. You know, as you got older, you realize your parents were just really dropping you off for a week because it was summer. They were tired of having you home from school, and they were just counting down the days till school starts, which is right around the corner. Football's coming up, so we got a lot to look forward to. We just have to work our way through August. Now, when you talk about Vacation Bible and some of the great stories, one of the classic stories is Noah's Ark. And we've all heard the story of Noah growing up and the ark and the great flood. So today's message is entitled, Build a Boat. Now, the story of Noah, if you really want to just boil it down and say it as simply as you can, the story of Noah is about God asking Noah to take action, to do something. And that's really it. God said, Noah, I need you to do something. Now, keep in mind, Adam and Eve, mankind's been around 6,000 years. So Adam and Eve was created, and approximately 2,000 years have passed, and Noah's on the earth. And during that 2,000 years since the fall of man, when sin entered in the Garden of Eden, the entire world had become extremely corrupt. I mean, sin and wickedness had taken over. People had left the garden. They'd started multiplying, populating the earth, and the devil was on a rampage, and the world had become so wicked that God was heartbroken. And he sat there and he said, what is going on here? And I just wish maybe I could start over. I need to hit the reset button. I think I'll just flood the world, start over. But he saw Noah, and Noah was faithful. And just like last week, we talked about the one. Jesus is always there to rescue the one. God saw the one. And in his heart, he couldn't destroy the world and take Noah, who is very faithful and a true servant of God, and have him perish as well. So he asked Noah to do something. He says, I need you to build an ark. I need you to build a boat. Noah didn't know what a boat was. Noah was a farmer. And back then there was really hardly any rainfall. It was very arid, it was very hot. And to say I'm going to create a flood was mind-boggling. And to say, I need you to build a boat, even though you have no carpentry or boat building skills, was another leap of faith. But what's interesting, when you read the story of Noah, he never questioned God's plan and purpose. He never said, why? He never said, well, I can't do that. No one's going to listen to me. He simply followed God's instructions. And he built a boat that took approximately 120 years to build. It was 3 football fields long. And during that time, he was ridiculed. He was mocked. People made fun of him. They called him crazy, insane, and he continued to preach God's message. I'm building this boat, and if you'll just believe and follow God and get in this boat, your life will be spared. Well, no one entered the boat except Noah and his family. And we know the story of all the animals, 2 by 2, making their way in. Now, Noah lived in a corrupt world, much like we do today. And God asked him to do something, to build an ark, because God wanted to protect those who honored him. And God also desires the same type of relationship he had with Noah with us. And the story of Noah's Ark really is about foreshadowing things to come. It's the foreshadowing and the story of the coming of Jesus. And a lot of people read Noah's Ark and don't see the message of Jesus and salvation and God's love in it. But we have to understand the ark represents God's love. The ark represents God's protection for us from the storms and the evil of this world. And to get into that ark, in Noah's time, you had to go through one door to get into the ark. And when they sealed that door shut, everybody that was contained within the ark was spared. And it's amazing because today we also have one door to get into acceptance into God's heavenly realm and love. And that door is Jesus Christ. And God, 2,000 years after Noah, Jesus came. And he too became the door, the passage into the Ark of the Covenant, into the Ark of God's love. And to do that, Noah had to follow the instructions and build his boat wisely. God gave him very specific instructions how to build the ark. Three levels, this long. Here's what you're going to do. And God gave us an instructions too. He gave us an instruction manual called the Bible. And just like Noah, we're to build our ark based on the instructions that we've been given. And we too know that there is one door for us to pass into to be secured when the storms of the world hit. And after it rained for 40 days and 40 nights, the boat floated for 150 days on the waters as the waters began to recede till it bumped into a mountaintop. And Noah let a dove go, and the dove came back, and he knew the ground wasn't dry. He let the dove go 7 days later, and the dove came back with an olive branch in its mouth. And Jesus is often portrayed as the dove. And Jesus is the Prince of Peace. And the olive branch is a signal, a symbol of peace. So just like Noah, when the dove returned with the olive branch, Jesus also goes out and he brings us peace, letting us know it's safe for us to step out into the real world and spread the message of God's love. So the question today is, have you secured your place on the ark? Have you walked through that door that is Jesus to step into the safety and protection of God's care, even though the rain and the floods and the corruptness of the world is swelling all around us? Are you ready to weather the storm? In Genesis chapter 6, verse 22, it says, Noah did everything just as God commanded him. That seems like a pretty simple statement, and I think we read through it, but then I stopped and I looked at it and I said, that's a powerful statement. Noah did everything just as God commanded him. And I thought, can you erase the name Noah? Could I put my name in there? Can you put your name in that blank? Do we do everything that God commands us to do? Truth is, no, we all fall short. But God is asking us to do something. Now, he's probably not asking us to build an ark, but he's asking us to share the gospel, to share the message of the salvation of Jesus Christ. And he asks us to do it based upon our story. And we each have our own story. Noah had to build a specific boat. And God asked us to build our own boat. And he asked Noah to change. And there's a point in our lives when Jesus steps into our heart and we invite him in, that our lives change too, and we are no longer who we used to be. You see, Noah it says he was a man of the soil. He grew things. He was a farmer. But all of a sudden, Noah's asked to become two things, a zookeeper and a boat builder. Now, I don't know which one's harder, being the zookeeper or the boat builder. Maybe the zookeeper. He had to spend 150 days on that ark keeping all the dogs and cats separated. He had to keep that coyote from chasing the roadrunner all over the place. I probably just aged myself for those of you who like cartoons. But we need to trust God in the story of building our ark, which is our testimony. What has God done in our lives? How did Jesus change us, and who are we asked to now become? And we must realize that He is God, and it's His plans that are best for us. And we need to read the instructions and stay ingrained in His Word in the Bible. Now, by building this ark, Noah intervened in the lives of others. You see, the word Noah means comfort. When his father named him, he says, Noah will comfort the people. And for 120 years as they were building this boat, Noah continued to preach to all those around him about what was coming, what was going to happen. He had unshakable faith, and he spread the word, and he spread the message, even when it fell on deaf ears and no one would listen, no matter who ridiculed him or who poked fun of him. No matter what the world said, Noah continued to spread the word. And we're asked to do the same thing in this world. No matter how many people or how much society pushes back on us and ridicules us and chastises us for our faith, we need to hold strong and continue to share the word. Noah was showing the people a way to escape death, an earthly death. If you'll come through this door and step into this ark, get in this boat, you'll be saved. And we need to be that same example. We need to go out into a world because the floods are coming, the water is rising, and we need to tell people there's one door. If you want to step into the safety and protection, Jesus Christ is that door. So whose life can you impact today? So a family member, a friend, a co-worker, somebody you know that's struggling, that you know is far from God. And we need to get out there and spread that same message. Hebrews 11:6 says, and without faith it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to Him must believe that He exists and that He rewards those who earnestly seek Him. And that's what Noah did. He had faith. He pleased God. And he told anyone, if you just believe, there's a reward. If you'll believe and get in this boat, believe in what I'm telling you, here's what God told me, you'll be saved. And we need to get out there with the same type of faith and spread the word. Now, Noah was not perfect. Let's not make any mistakes about that. He sinned just like the rest of us. He fell short. And he was not perfect, but he was righteous in God's eyes because he sought God's heart. He sought God's direction. And you don't have to be perfect either to carry out God's plan for you. You just have to keep the faith. God does not demand perfection. He demands faithfulness. Noah trusted God without fully understanding or seeing the end result. Noah didn't even know what a flood was. He'd barely seen rain in his lifetime. And yet God's telling him, here's what's going to happen. And he continued to work diligently. He put 120 years in of labor to build this boat, this ark, not even knowing and fully comprehending what the end result was. And sometimes our lives are like that. God's calling us to do something, and we're really not sure what the end result is. We're just called to take the first step. It's kind of like walking up a staircase in a cloud or a fog. You may not see the second or the third step. You may not even see where you're ultimately going to get to. But God's saying, step forward and keep stepping. There's secure ground ahead of you. You just keep obeying and following. Now, our faithfulness will see its true victory when we go to heaven. Now, we must extend our faith beyond worldly limits, because with God, all things are possible. See, the problem is we do everything with worldly limits. We are confined in this worldly dimension. So when Noah was telling all these people about this rain and this flood and everything was coming, they couldn't get outside of the worldly realm. And yet we know miracles exist. A miracle is defined as an event in the physical world that surpasses human or natural powers. So the human mind and the world and the law of physics and the natural world, people couldn't comprehend it. A miracle is defined as something that's created by divine intervention or supernatural causes. And that is what God was getting ready to do. The flood and the events that happened were a miracle. Only God could make that happen. And we must remember, with God, all things are possible. So whatever He's asking you to do in your life, keep the faith. Miracles do happen. In Genesis 7:11, it says, in the 600th year of Noah's life, on the 17th day of the second month, on that day, all the springs of the great deep burst forth, and the floodgates of heaven were opened. We often think of just the rain, but the rivers and the wells and the springs and the underground water came bursting up through the ground. You know, like volcanoes spew lava. The water came from everywhere. God created a miracle, and the earth was covered in water. And if you look at today's world, it seems like the flood waters are erupting from everywhere. They're coming from government and politicians and societal norms, and just it's flood. The devil's trying to bring evil about from every angle he can. Are you prepared for the waters? The storms are on the horizon. It's starting to rain, folks, and we need to get our boat ready. I love the saying, when it starts to rain, you got to be like that third monkey on the ramp of Noah's Ark, and it's starting to rain. It's time to fight. It's time to go down, because somebody's got to go, because only two of us are getting on that boat. It's time to get going. Do you trust God that your heavenly reward is worth the opposition you're going to face today? Is your life grounded in the faithfulness and the principles of faith, hope, and love, and the salvation of Jesus Christ? Now, most people only do something if they see a personal value in return. Most of us only come to work if we expect to get paid. If we didn't expect to get paid, a lot of us wouldn't even come, because there's no personal reward. So, well, I'm not going to do that. There's not a personal reward for me. A lot of us don't do favor and help people unless we expect a favor in return. But God asks us to step out in faith and trust His plan and to serve without an immediate return. We focus so much on earthly returns, we have to change our vision and lift our eyes toward heaven and focus on the heavenly reward and return. Trusting God's the best investment you can make, and it has a guaranteed eternal reward. And that eternal return should be our goal. So when God gives you an assignment, follow it in detail. Follow the instructions. You're not putting together a charcoal grill or you're going to have a few pieces left over. We need to follow the instructions that God has laid out for us in our lives, and we need to follow Jesus. And you're going to get ridiculed, but we have to remain steadfast. We always like to say around here, God does not call those who are prepared. He prepares those who are called. And He made a promise. In Genesis 9:13, I have set my rainbow in the clouds, and it will be a sign of covenant between me and the earth. When it was all over, God set a rainbow, and He promised, and He showed Noah that I'm faithful and true to what I say, and I won't do this again, and my love will always remain. He's calling you today to change something. Now, last week we talked about rescue mission, pursuing the one. And He calls each of us, He puts somebody in our lives that's our one, to go out and make that difference, even if it's in one life, to pursue, just like Jesus did with pursuing the lost sheep. We're called to go out on His behalf and to lead and to share the gospel and to point people to the foot of the cross. So as we wrap up, we need to learn to take the risk. Ecclesiastes 11:4 says, the one who watches the wind blow does not harvest. The one who watches the clouds does not gather. And that's a powerful verse, because what it's telling us is If you stand around looking at the clouds and leaning on your shovel, you ain't getting any work done. If you stand around daydreaming all day about, oh, what I'd like to do and what I could do, but you don't take action, nothing gets done. God will give you a shovel, but that hole's not getting dug until you go to work. He'll give you the tools. We have to put the work in. Living for Jesus is a privilege. It's time to take action. Are you timid about sharing the gospel? Some people are really timid. Hey, did you share with your friend the message of Jesus? Have you shared with a spouse, a family member? Oh, I'm scared. Oh, I don't like talking about it. I'm no good at that stuff. God will give you everything you need. We need to pray big prayers. We need to pray for that boldness and that confidence. We need to pray for prayers that are so big, God gets up on the edge of the seat and looks at the angel and says, did you hear that? Did you hear what he just prayed for? Do you hear what she's asking? They can't do that within their own power. They're asking me to intervene. They're asking me to participate. That's what he wants. That's what gets him excited. When we have big, unlimited prayers of faith, just like Noah took the risk, and he stepped out in faith, God's required to show up. And that's when he shows up in full force and full power. So in closing today, what's the risk you've been afraid to take? Starting a new business, changing careers, witnessing to that one person, starting that new ministry. Pray that big prayer, step out in faith, and be like Noah and build a boat this week. God bless you. We'll see you next week.